Welcome back to Learning to Love PlayStation. As stated at the end of my Spyro 3 video, today we'll be looking at Spyro, Enter the Dragonfly, and oh boy, we'll take it from the top. A lot of YouTubers who look at this game exhibit a bunch of anger for it, and hey, that's more than fair, but I want to go in giving it the benefit of the doubt. Spyro 4 was developed by Equinoxy and Check 6 Games, making it the first console Spyro game not to be handled by the original development team, Insomniac Games. Some cursory googling has shown me that Enter the Dragonfly was the first title these development studios shipped, and is pretty much the only title they shipped. If you don't know the deal with all that, basically Universal Interactive Studios gained the rights to Spyro sometime after Spyro 3, and as Insomniac began work on Ratchet & Clank games, Universal needed developers to work on Spyro games, leading us to two Game Boy Advance titles I know nothing about, and this game. So you can probably infer that Enter the Dragonfly is quite a different beast from the original three titles. That's mostly a correct assumption, but at the same time it's also kind of incorrect. Putting the disc into the PS2 and turning it on reveals a loading bar, which leads to a loading screen. Okay. After setting up a save, we're treated to our opening cutscene. Spyro, Sparks, Hunter, and Bianca are at a party where the baby dragons get their dragonflies. No Elora again. I'll take this opportunity to point out just how weird it is that they've made a giant balloon out of the sorceress, a creature we killed in the last game for wanting to kill dragons. Maybe make a statue or something, but still. So, Ripto, Gulp, and Crush show up out of nowhere. Many seem to think he died in Spyro 2, but he shows up in the epilogue for that game as well as Spyro 3. Ripto all but tells Spyro that yes, he is still evil, and he even pulls the generic, "You know, you should join me" card.
You know, you should join me. We would make a great team.
What do you want this time, Ripto?
Oh, yeah. What do we want this time, boss?
You're not hired for your brains, you dinosaurian landmass! Keep thinking and I will send you back to the place I found you, unemployed in Molten Crater, begging for work from Nasty North.
Spyro declines, and Ripto decides that magically teleporting all the dragonflies away is his big plan this time. Honestly, not a bad plan. Take a dragonfly away, and a dragon only has one hit point after all. His wand malfunctions, and once again, he runs away like a sissy. Realizing the severity of the situation, Spyro sets out to get all the dragonflies back. Such as Sparks, who's in the next room. That was easy. Bianca gives you Bubble Breath, introducing a core gameplay element we'll touch on soon. After that, you're sent into the game world, and the plot only rears its head twice afterwards. Hours from now in the game, a cutscene plays where Ripto returns to his lair and wonders where all the dragonflies are. It feels like this should play immediately after the first cutscene, but actually plays in-game after you've collected a certain amount of dragonflies. I mean, it feels like they really wanted or needed a cutscene in the middle of the game and just kinda stuck this one here. The last cutscene I encountered was just at the fight with Ripto, which again, we'll get to in due time. There's a very good chance you've noticed how bad the character models look, and how over-exaggeratedly they all animate. I mean, just look at Ripto. God! Yeah, the models didn't all look amazing on the original PlayStation, but the original PlayStation was one of the first 3D consoles. And yeah, some characters in the original games tended to over-animate some, but it was more difficult to convey character emotion with the limitations in place. Nearly every character in this game just looks doughy and animates so stiffly. Spyro actually looks okay, all things considered, but put him next to something with a half-baked run cycle and yikes! In terms of presentation, the game doesn't look all that great. The frame rate lands anywhere from a smooth 60 frames per second to sub 30 in a heartbeat. Textures don't all look wonderful either. In my opinion, while the original trilogy had technically inferior graphics to this game, a much stronger art direction leaves those titles to be much more pleasant to the eye. The game does borrow past level themes on occasion, but even then I just feel myself yearning for simpler times. Enter the Dragonfly just looks so soulless. This is probably a good time to point out what you may have already guessed: this game was rushed. Universal wanted Spyro 4 out by Christmas of 2002, and as a result of that, the developers, who were on their first rodeo, had to rush the game. They were targeting a consistent 60 frames per second alongside fast loading times, of which the final product fails at both. Going forward, it's really important to keep in mind the development was rushed. On a note of what the developers were aiming for, Enter the Dragonfly was intended to have 120 total dragonflies to rescue, and 25 full levels to explore. In its current state, Enter the Dragonfly has 90 total dragonflies and 9 full levels, in one hub world, with 9,000 gems. Oh boy, I've drawn this dance out long enough. Let's crack down on what matters here. Enter the Dragonfly is an attempt to emulate what Insomniac was doing with Spyro, in addition to adding its own nuances to the formula. Spyro has all the moves you would expect: breathes fire, jumps, glides, hovers at the end of glides, charges, you name it, it's here. Picking up the controller to play, however, you'll immediately notice a difference. Spyro turns more slowly, his jumps are much more awkward, he doesn't gain forward momentum when holding forward while gliding. Playing Spyro feels just how you remember, except worse. That will be a consistent theme to this game. It does feel close to how he controlled in the PS1 titles, but not close enough for me to ever be comfortable with it. Right off the bat in the game, you are introduced to the concept of elemental breaths other than fire. In past titles, these might have been temporary power-ups you'd gain in certain levels, but as you progress through Spyro 4, you'll gain the ability to shoot lightning, ice, and bubbles at will. The contexts for using anything other than fire are entirely situational, and you're always given a heads up on which breath you'll need to use. In the end, it feels mostly arbitrary. When a gameplay mechanic is this contextual, you begin to question the entire point. It's harmless, sure, but feels like needless complication. You'll quickly come across Hunter, who once again tells you how to jump, and is needed on his own planet, I guess. Fuck! He just vanishes and doesn't show up again. This too will be a running theme in the game. You'll stumble around the game's meh-inducing singular hub world until you find the first level, Dragonfly Dojo. This level takes a few cues from Bamboo Terrace and Year of the Dragon, with this level having Japanese influence as opposed to Chinese. Also, Moneybags is here! He charges you some gems to use magic powers he has now, and he moves some platforms for you. And once you leave the level, you get the gems back. As this is Moneybags' only appearance in the game, therefore you can't get the gems from him later in the game, so you just magically get them back now. Moneybags. So, while we're here, let's go on to a level design gripe I have that runs through each of the game's 9 levels. I've explained kind of basically what makes a Spyro level work before, but I'll throw it out again here. Spyro levels work wonderfully in smaller, segmented areas where the player has just enough agency and urge to snoop around a little to uncover treasure. The more narrow level structures lead the player to move ahead and generally have a pretty clear idea of where to go. Opening the levels up to be wider on occasion provides a nice change of pace and makes the players feel like they can breathe, and ultimately distracts them just enough from realizing how narrow a game Spyro can be. Sprinkle some gems in to help keep the flow of the level, tuck some away in a nook and cranny here and there to encourage exploration. Boom! Fun Spyro level. Open up these levels to all have wide open spaces, with gems sprinkled all over the place, often in zigzag lines. That's when things start to fall apart. Tedium quickly sets in. Gems are everywhere! I understand the game has nearly a third of the levels planned, and the developers probably wanted to keep a respectably high total gem count in comparison to the other games. But honestly, that does more harm than good when gems worth 1 and 2 points are literally almost everywhere. Combine that with Sparks' lower gem collection radius, and you have an exercise in frustration. You'll often run right by gems that Sparks would have picked up in the previous titles, and combining that with how awkwardly Spyro controls in this game, and levels that barely have anything else going on other than a few enemies, and the weakness of the Spyro formula becomes apparent. That's not to say the levels don't have narrow paths at times, but everything just becomes more and more grating with the basics as you progress, that by the end you'll be thankful that there are only 9 levels. I understand the amount of gems is due to being rushed, but I question if more development time would have led to any level design changes. If Sparks picked up gems from further distances and if Spyro controlled better, this could be a moot point, and the levels would just be boring to progress through instead of tedious. But alas. In each level, there are 10 dragonflies to save. Some you'll get from completing tasks such as the speedway stages, but a few are just in the levels themselves for you to find. This is where the bubble breath Bianca gave Spyro comes into play. Find a dragonfly, capture it in a bubble. It should be simple, but it's not. The hit detection on the bubbles are so lousy. So many times they just don't work. Oh, and when it looks like they didn't work, oh, you caught it! Not helping matters is that the dragonfly flees on sight, even though you're trying to save them. And they taunt you after flying away from you? What the hell? On paper, I should like saving the dragonflies. It's like the dragon eggs from Spyro 3. You're saving a vital part of the dragon's existence, and I should be down for this. But when they're not willing to cooperate, just lousy. Plain and simple. Each level has challenge gates, much like Spyro 3. This is where you'll find optional platforming objectives and speedway stages. Speedway stages work much like before, just worse. See, there's that running theme I was telling you about earlier. There are 4 sets of 8 objects to destroy. Spyro's flying control feels familiar, yet worse. Trying to make precision adjustments to Spyro's flight path in the heat of the moment is an exercise in anxiety, as you're never sure if you're about to overshoot Spyro and miss a target. I'll admit that the flying in prior games wasn't perfect, but it still felt really good. Here, not so much. Oh, and the racing's back. Ooh, mama, is the racing back. Racing near the dragon was a bit tough. You needed to memorize the courses, know where the star boosts were to take advantage of, and ultimately, most likely, try each race a few different times before succeeding. Here, the same, but worse. I only played a couple, and it's not that they're bad, it's just that when I went into 3rd place and passed the next racer, you know, what would put you in 2nd place, I stayed in 3rd place. After that, I just said to hell with races and moved on. By now, I've talked a lot about Enter the Dragonfly. The game doesn't advance itself anymore. There are some vehicle-based missions, a sliding level, platforming, which I just gave up on due to how poorly the game is made. It all culminates in a weak climax against Ripto. I kid you not, he makes a meta remark about not wanting to sound like a video game villain.
Possible. I will take care of you permanently. Oh, wait a minute, I said that last time. I wouldn't want to sound like a video game cliche. Let me try that again.
You utilize 2 of the breath powers against him to lower a shield, then hit him with the breath you were using. Do that 2 times and you've earned yourself a credit roll. The game's only boss fight. 2 hits. Again, maybe it's different if you 100% the game, but fuck that! You don't even get any form of cutscene wrapping things up unless you 100% the game. I guess I'll never know that the party resumed and that Spyro most likely makes a DreamWorks face towards the camera. The original vision of Enter the Dragonfly sounded promising. A PS2 title emulating the Insomniac style, where Nasty Nork and Ripto made good on the epilogues in Spyro 2 and 3 by teaming up to take Spyro down for good, with a lot of levels to travel through and items to collect. What we got was a sad, wet fart in church that no one wants to speak up for and wants to leave in the past, rather rightfully so. I'll give the game this though. At times, you can actually see the potential shining through the cracks. You can see there was an honest effort made before an incomplete product was forced out the door. Some levels nailed the Spyro art direction as best as they can for a title like this. The charm of the NPCs is there, bad animation aside, and it can still be a bit of fun when the game isn't falling to pieces technically. But the more that I have to think about this game, the more soured I am on it, and it's even actually starting to rub on my affection for the original titles. So I'd really rather just end this now and leave it behind me. In making this, I actually learned there was one more game which much more loosely tried the Insomniac style. Spyro, A Hero's Tale. I won't be looking at that game now. Someday, sure. But now I just want to put my mind elsewhere. I'm not sure what game I will be looking at next. It'll either be the first Crash Bandicoot, or, thanks to MBM, Rayman or Blasto. Until then, however, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time on Learning to Love PlayStation.
Remember, do not underestimate the power of PlayStation.